What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Pursuit of Progress podcast, where we talk real growth, real leadership, and what it actually takes to reach that next level. Today, we're pulling from one of the greatest minds in sports, Coach Nick Saban. We're going to be talking a lot about stuff, but really more than anything else, whether or not you're into college football, you can't ignore what Saban built at Alabama. He didn't just win, he dominated for decades. He's both one of mine and Ben's favorite coaches of all time. And what really makes him so powerful isn't actually his coaching, it's his philosophy on what gets in the way of greatness. Saban often says if everybody doesn't buy into the exact same principles and values of the organization and that extremely high standard, you're never going to be successful. So today, we're going to be breaking down his 5 enemies of greatness and how you can avoid them in your own life and your own business. So let's go ahead and get into it. But before we do, would love to welcome back, as always, my co-host, Ben. What is up, my man?
Hey, my brother, how are you doing? So excited to be back and getting after this with Coach Nick Saban's principles.
He's I know that you like Saban a lot, but I kind of went out maybe a little bit out on a limb there saying he's one of your favorites. I know he is one of mine just from his track record. Few people have the kind of success that he's had over his career so far.
What's so attractive to me about coaching is coaches that just have a very high level of discipline, commitment, and excel at all levels. And I feel the same way about Bill Belichick. I used to be a Bill Belichick hater. And then I watched this documentary on him, and you just learn how dedicated these guys are. And one thing that's really interesting, I didn't know this beforehand, but 1994, 1995, Bill Belichick was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, and Nick Saban was his defensive coordinator. And on that staff, they had Mike Montgomery, Nick Saban, Bill Belichick. I think there were like 2 or 3 other Hall of Fame coaches. So it was an amazing staff. Everybody got fired after that season when the team moved back to Baltimore. But those 2 guys in particular, Nick Saban and Bill Belichick, are the 2 that really stand out to me for just pursuing excellence and greatness and have that really long track record, not over years, but decades.
So you think they're in more or less a similar age then? They're probably within a few years of each other?
I think so. Yeah. I know that they're good friends still. I was reading an article just this past week. Nick Saban has moved into commentating, and Bill Belichick is now the head coach at UNC. And so there were some interview clips this past weekend, and I know that they both have just incredible admiration and respect for one another.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's get into it. And one last thing before we do, guys, if you don't know, Ben is actually a coach, and he's been a coach for a long time for the Wheat Ridge High School cross country and track team. So also just kind of excited to have his take on this episode with being a coach himself and just some of the same maybe values and principles that Saban instills in his team. Just kind of, just getting, Ben, your perspective on how maybe some of this stuff also applies to even at a high school level.
Yeah, what I'm seeing and what I really believe is that everything matters. The small things, the big things. First of all, it comes down to having a vision. And there are kids that are very serious about this in high school now. The kids that are serious are more serious than they've ever been. They have mental performance coaches. They have nutritionists. They have trainers. It's really incredible, and it's a whole nother level. But my concern is the kind of more of like the general population. In that regard, there's a lot less discipline kind of overall. And so that's one thing that I'm trying to help kids with is just focusing on their vision, really identifying what that looks like and having some big dreams. Once you have those, then creating the plan and going after it with everything that you have. That ultimately, you have to have the vision and then the plan, and then you can go and execute it. But like we talk about, you got to have that structure. It really is a system. You got to have the structure in place. You got to have the mentors, the accountability partners, the people that are willing to share the workload with you. And I know that looking back at my personal high school career when I was a kid, some of those things I did really well, but others I did not. And I have learned a lot of those values with you. All of the things that we're partners on and holding each other accountable. And there's been tremendous growth in my life because we get to share some of that workload.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good point. And consistency, man. Not only that, but just doing it over a long period of time.
Oh, yep. The consistency is probably the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing I talk about a lot at the high school level, consistency before intensity. You have to learn how to be consistent before you can be intense. Most people try to do it the opposite. They'll go have sporadic workouts, and they're motivated, they're encouraged. Maybe they watched a documentary or watched a game, and they're all fired up, and they want to go out and run 10 miles, and they don't run for 3 weeks. When I was training my daughter, the first thing that we did as she got into running is we just ran a mile every day for a year and a half. She had to build out that consistency, get used to what that looks like and what it feels like. Once she did that, then we stepped up the intensity.
Hmm. Very cool.
Yeah.
Let's jump into it.
Well, let's jump into it. Point number one here, entitlement. So entitlement is a silent killer. It's the belief that past effort guarantees future rewards. And this is what Saban has said about entitlement. You get up every day, you're entitled to nothing. Nothing is acceptable but your best. And to me, that's all about standards and performance. And what I love about Saban is when you see these great coaches, they win the championship, and it almost doesn't even look like they're that happy
Mm-hmm.
in the interviews, and they're smiling, but a lot of us fans, it's like, man, why aren't you fired up and excited and running all over the place? Because they are ready to get back to work, literally. And that's what Saban would do. And these greats, like, they win the championship, something that you prepare the entire year for, and then you are back in the office the next day. And that brings me to one of my favorite quotes, where it talks about success being rented. So success is rented, and the rent is due every day. You got to
Love that.
show up. You got to have that high standard of performance. You got to rent the success. But entitlement usually shows up after a win. So when you think you've done enough or you've earned your keep, you can coast. But greatness only belongs to those who earn it again every day. And that's one thing that I love about the careers that we're in. It doesn't matter how great last year was. It doesn't matter how great the last quarter was. Last month is meaningless. The
Mm-hmm.
only thing that matters is, what are you doing right now? How is this month going? What is next quarter looking like? Everything is forward looking. Your past results do not guarantee future results. And that's so true what we do. And that's why you got to keep that fire burning. Um, these are things that I have learned how to combat entitlement. It's kind of, the way that I describe it is always staying humble but hungry. And I have that written down on my mirror. Stay humble, stay hungry. In the sports world, you want to act like a rookie, even if you're a vet. I think of guys like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, just ultimately out prepare everybody else. They got so good at preparation and not being entitled that they were able to be consistent, stay healthy, and just perform at a much higher level for longer. And another thing that's really dangerous, I think, is when people start to think they deserve something.
Absolutely.
You won the championship, means nothing for next year. You don't deserve anything. Um, and then just being grounded, balancing that hunger and humility, and that's greater than the comfort and the expectation. An athlete that I think of today is Nikola Jokic. You know that I'm a big Denver Nuggets fan, but one thing that he changed in his game 4 or 5 years ago is that regardless of the result, win or loss, after every game, he goes and works out. Preseason, regular season, postseason. And because that is his standard.
That's really cool. I remember kind of a similar thing with Michael Jordan about like these chest passes, which are one of the most simple, fundamental aspects of playing basketball. And I forgot the number, but like for every single game, he would do 500 chest passes, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't need to do it. He's a pro, best ever, but still, it's part of his routine. It's part of just his hunger, his desire to just continue to not to act like a rookie, even when he's a vet.
Yeah, he's Michael Jordan, the best ever, the greatest ever, but yet he's doing fundamentals. He's
Mm-hmm.
practicing the fundamentals.
Let's jump into number two. So, again, these are the five enemies of greatness by Nick Saban. And number two is just a lack of discipline. And this one's probably going to sound pretty basic, but it really is the foundation of absolutely everything because without discipline, talent, it really just becomes, I don't know, like wasted potential.
Mm,
Saban's message is really clear on this. He talks about how discipline is doing what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like it. And, I relate this to my personal life nearly every single morning with when the alarm clock goes off at, 5:20 and it's dark and now it's starting to get cold outside again in the
yeah,
mornings.
yeah.
And, I don't want to get up, but it's that discipline that it's something that needs to be done. And I don't feel like it still after doing it almost on a daily basis for, 6, 7 years at this point. But I think all I can only other thing I'll add to that is as soon as you get up, just get moving a little bit. You're always glad you did. And then the other quote, kind of along the same lines of this lack of discipline, is one of my all-time favorites and something that's I think very well known as being a quote from Nick Saban. And he talks about how you need to practice not
Hmm.
until you get it right. You need to practice until you can't get it wrong. And that's just such a unique take on that and something that I think is really, really impactful if you think about that and just kind of have that just be something that's maybe on your mind on a daily basis if you're having a hard time with discipline. Practice until you can't get it wrong, not just until you get it right. You
Yeah.
know, it's these little lapses that really kill your momentum, being late, cutting corners, ignoring
Hmm.
some of the details. A lot of success just in general in life is it's all about the basics. And this is just a really good example of that.
Mm. Yeah, it's being so disciplined that it's second nature. I
Hmm.
remember watching those clips of him when he was at Alabama and how they would run the same play 20 times in a row. And he would, I remember him saying that exact thing. We're not going to practice this uh, until we can't get it right. We're going to practice it until we can't get it wrong.
Hmm.
And it just
Such a
becomes second
impactful.
nature.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
impactful. Kind of like how Ben just did on the first of these five. I'll do it also with this one. Just a few kind of takeaways or ways you guys can think about how to combat being lacking discipline. So the first one is just really treating discipline like a muscle, just reps every single day. We've already been talking about that quite a bit so far on this episode, but just having that repetition, having that consistency, because building these habits that really function when motivation doesn't. It's almost becomes second nature. It's not even a thought in your mind of, oh, am I going to get up this morning? It's just habit. You're going to get up and you're just going to move on and do it just like you do every other day because that's how you do it. That's discipline. And that's just, what needs to be done if you want to be at this top level. Also, though, I think it's important to keep score, maybe measure some of these actions, not just your intentions. Just figure out different ways that you can really track your progress. I think when you can track your progress and get a little bit of that satisfaction from seeing growth, that always is a little bit extra motivating and will keep you hopefully going in the right direction. And then last but not least, just how we feel has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with our behaviors. Just suck it up and just follow the plan. I think the last thing I'll say, Ben, before maybe getting your final take on this second one is, we both have done 75 hard, which is a really difficult, challenging, but also rewarding mental and physical toughness kind of exercise. You do it over the course of 75 days. But man, after about day 30, day 35, this one really starts to hit, just having to deal with your behavior of just not wanting to do it, cut corners, but just following the plan, being consistent. And, that pain is temporary in comparison to the reward and just the satisfaction of knowing that you did what you were supposed to do.
Yeah, and I've always said that once you build out those habits and you set those standards, you learn to value those in time because you know that the value they're bringing into your life. Where when you have high standards and you become a very disciplined person, well, it's not just going to make you disciplined, it's going to make you strong, powerful, resilient.
Hmm.
And the way that my kids would describe it, they're teenagers, is your aura just makes your aura brighter and bigger, and you just appear more powerful and you're more confident too. Going back to the teenager comment, I have two teenagers, and a lot of times they will say things like, "Well, I feel like it. I don't want to do this, Dad. I don't feel like it." And I always tell them point blank, I'm not asking you how you feel. This has nothing to do with how you feel. It's about your commitment. It's about following through with what needs to get done. Feelings have nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't always
Very,
like
very.
that answer, though.
Yeah. Uh, it sucks, but I'm glad you're just giving them some of that tough love. Most parents don't do that, and man,
Yeah.
these are these little life lessons as a high schooler that man really pay off. Just having this type of I don't know, just ability to understand these things at an early age is really going to take them far in life, I think.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's funny when you're in high school, you think life is hard. You think life is difficult because you're in high school and you got homework and maybe you have some athletic things that you're part. High school is not hard. It is not hard. And I tell them that soon you're going to be responsible for yourself. You're going to be paying your own bills. You're going to have to provide for you, maybe a family. You're going to be developing your career. You're going to experience what stress is really like, not just high school stress. So things are going to change, but it's a good experience for them and for me.
Hmm.
Well, let's move on to point number 3 here. Enemies of greatness. So point number 3, circumstances over vision. Man, this one is so powerful, and I'm glad that we put this on here because I'm such a big believer in vision. And I think that we should have a very compelling vision for ourselves in every area of our life, personally, with our relationships, with our careers, with how we want to look. What kind of person are we growing into? And just sharing some personal stories here. I have this vision of what I look like 10 years from now and how I act and how I behave. And how does this Ben deal with adversity when adversity comes into his life? Is he cool? Does he stay calm? Does he know how to
How's
communicate?
how's the hair in 10 years?
It's looking good.
Okay, cool,
The
cool.
Propecia is still working. So hair's looking good. Thank you. But, you know, I think the biggest thing, the mistake that most people make, and I'm guilty of this at times as well, is that we can't let our conditions dictate our efforts. So kind of just going back to some of the points that we were making a minute ago, where I'm not feeling great today, so I'm going to cut the workout short. Or I don't feel like making the sales calls, so I'm just gonna say that I did, or I'm gonna send emails instead. Um, High performers like the Nick Sabans and the Bill Belichicks, these athletes that have performed at a very high level, they stick to the standard. It's not about the weather, the scoreboard, the mood, their feelings. They have a vision, they create the plan, they build the structure, and then they execute. So if you want to be good, you really don't have a lot of choices because that is what it takes. This is a favorite quote of mine from Bill Walsh, this next one. And this is what he said. Champions behave like champions before they become champions. They have a winning standard of performance before they become winners. So what he's saying there is that you have to learn the habits, the behaviors of how champions move, of how they act, of how they believe, what their day to day is like. And when you have mastered the mundane and all of those daily disciplines and you start preparing, believing, acting like a champion, then you become a champion.
And really, really quick, I just want to add into that for any of our listeners out there that maybe are just getting started with something big that they're trying to accomplish, and they're really struggling with some of these things we've been talking about. I don't care if you're not halfway to where you need to be regarding, having a business plan and maybe having the money, the investment to start your business and whatever it is. But just using this as an example, there's
Mm,
still things you can do today. There's still things you can do tomorrow to behave like that person that doesn't cost any money at all. Things
yeah.
like getting up early, going to the gym, even if you don't really have to get up early tomorrow, just doing it anyways, because that's the behavior that needs to be developed and built for when that time comes when that is going to be a requirement. You can do things today
Yeah.
despite whatever place you are, even if you're on literally page one of your game plan of trying to be a successful entrepreneur. Doesn't matter if you even have a business yet. Start off with just this lifestyle, this performance of just being a winner, acting like it before you even are one.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And that is just so powerful. Well, let's talk about ways that we can combat it. So how can you combat overcoming your circumstances. And again, I just go back to the vision piece. You have to have a compelling vision for your life, because when you do, you are working towards something. Going back to your point a minute ago, I think a lot of people, they make the mistake of getting too hung up on their circumstances today. And one of my big takeaways from James Clear's Atomic Habits books is when he referenced that your trajectory, where you're headed, your trend is by far more important than where your present circumstances are at right now. And I think it's so easy to let our circumstances define us. But when you, like you just said, when you get used to doing hard things, that is where you become powerful. I'm the same way. I don't want to get up early a lot of days, but I know by doing that, it makes me tough. It makes me resilient. I feel positive about myself. This is my quote that I said, easy days. If your days are easy, you're going to have a hard life. So easy days, hard life, hard days, easy life. So if your days are hard, if you make every day hard, if you get up early, you stay disciplined, you read, you do your cold plunge, you go for your run, you get the things done that need to get done, regardless if you want to, your life will become very easy.
Mm-hmm. I love that, man. Very, very
The
powerful.
road to I came across this a couple of days ago, but it says the road to hell is going to feel like heaven.
It's cool. I like that. I haven't heard that before.
And I was just sharing that with my kids, meaning that when you say yes to everything and yes to the fast food, and I'm going to skip the workout, I'm not going to go to practice, I'm not going to do my homework. Hey, all that stuff feels great, but it's taking you to a place that you don't want to go.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of back to the how do we combat this? So have a compelling vision. Training yourself to show up regardless of your environment. You always show up. You're on time. It doesn't matter what others are doing. I've learned that way to with my personal dress, how I present myself professionally. In our industries, it's very normal for people just to dress down. I just decided that if I'm going to a professional event, I'm not going to dress down. I'm going to look presentable. I'm going to look professional, and I'm going to show up regardless of how everyone else has showed up, because it's about me and how I'm presenting myself. Um, this is another interesting one. Remind yourself that your goals don't care how you feel. Your goals do not give a damn about how you feel. And then this is another one too that's really big for me. Like those, have you ever noticed that sometimes those days that you don't want to go work out, or you're on the cusp of allowing yourself to skip the workout, but then you overcome and you make it into the gym anyways? I have found that those days a lot of times are some of my best days. The days where I almost quit, or I almost gave up, or didn't go to the gym, or I didn't want to go for the run. My daughter and I, we were up in Vail this past weekend, and it was Saturday night, 5 p.m., miserable conditions out, probably 50 degrees. It was like this cold sleet rain. And we were either going to have to run 10 miles at that time or run 10 miles the next day after a very, very long day at a celebration of life, and then a very long car ride. So we decided to run that night. And neither one of us wanted to do it. We almost agreed to not do it. And then we were talking about going shorter. But then we just got out there. The first 2 miles were hell because it was just so miserable. But then the sun came out, and it just turned into this amazing, beautiful run. And it was the best training run that I've had in months. And yet we were on the cusp of not even doing it.
That's really sweet. That's great, man. Yeah, I agree. It's oftentimes the ones that are the hardest to get started with that are the ones that really have the most just satisfaction once you've completed them.
Mm-hmm.
I think when I was doing the 75 hard the last time, I know Andy Frisella, the guy that created that, had talked a little bit about that too, where on those days, like that run that you're on with Naitia, your daughter, I love the feeling of realizing that how few other people are putting in the work in those conditions when you are.
Yeah.
And it just gives you this extra sense of confidence and satisfaction that you're doing what other people aren't willing to do. You're taking those, just extraordinary, unnatural,
Mm.
just what it takes to really stand out and be in that 1% club. And I know it's hard regardless still when you're in that moment, but once you get through it, it just really gives you that extra step of confidence and just, I don't know, it's very rewarding.
Yeah, and going back to your point, when you learn to do these hard things, it makes doing those other things so much easier.
Hmm.
If
Yeah.
you can go get up every morning at 5 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. and go to the gym, well, how tough is a sales call?
Yeah. Love it, man. Well, let's move on to the next one. So we've got five here. We're up to number four. So the fourth one, again, these are the five enemies of greatness. So number four by Nick Saban is self pity. Another term for this is victimhood. And I think this might be, of all of these, the fastest way to lose. Self
Yeah.
pity, it absolutely kills resilience. It oftentimes kind of shifts the responsibility from you to everything around you. You're a product of your environment. You're not proactive, you're reactive. Everybody has got to be responsible for their own self determination. And if you think not confronting people who don't do the right things is helping your organization, you're absolutely wrong.
Hmm.
I think self pity oftentimes it leads to blame, and blame then leads to just inaction. And I don't know. I feel like then inaction is really the death of momentum. So it's a slippery slope and something that you really got to be at least self aware of enough to avoid at all costs having this self pity. And a few of Saban's, kind of recommendations on how to fight this, how to combat this. Number one is just to replace victimhood with ownership. I don't
Yeah.
care if, whatever it is, take responsibility for your own actions. And that's a great sign of a true leader is if even if it's an employee of a leader or, somebody on the leader's team that makes the mistake, that leader themselves is the one that still takes ownership. And a great example,
Mm.
if you guys want to really dig into this one, is Jocko Willink, who's a Navy SEAL. He's got an awesome book called Extreme Ownership, which takes this to a whole nother level. Also, just killing excuses and focusing on the next play. So just get those excuses out of your mind. It's not even in your brain, and just focus on what it's going to need to take to do that next step to find success. And then the third and final one is just to understand how to choose responsibility, even when it's not your fault. And that kind of falls back into that, ownership, extreme ownership, regardless of whose fault it was, you're taking that responsibility as a leader. And by doing
Hmm.
so, you're going to get the self pity, hopefully completely out of your brain altogether.
Hmm. Yeah, the self-pity and the victimhood, what you're doing when you become a victim is you're giving your power away. You're saying that you're not in control, you don't have a voice, it's not up to you. You're giving your power away or your control to your environment or your circumstances, and it's something that losers do. It's a behavior of the poor, it's a behavior of it's loser behavior is what it is,
Hmm.
and it I think we've all been there, but it's having an awareness that I have a choice here. I can move forward. I can learn. Uh, I can take ownership. And taking ownership, I think the reason that it can be challenging is because it means that we have to take responsibility for something and maybe look inward and
Absolutely.
acknowledge a poor decision, some failure, uh, we need to improve our behaviors, our habits, and ultimately take accountability.
Yep.
All right. Well, number five here. This is the number five enemy of greatness: complacency. Ooh. Ooh. Complacency creates a blatant disregard for doing what is right. Read that again. Complacency creates a blatant disregard for doing what is right. Complacency turns champions into ex champions. The moment you think you've arrived, you've already started the decline. I just think of so many sports teams with this, and it's so much more difficult to stay at the top of the mountain than it is to get there. And it's because people get complacent. To get to the top of the mountain, you have to outwork, out hustle, out prepare. And then going back to some of the other themes that we talked about, people, athletes make the mistake that because I got here, well, now I'm entitled. Now I can be complacent. I don't have to work as hard. We
Yeah.
we all know how Rocky 4 started.
I don't. Is that the one that Carl Weathers dies?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that's how it starts?
Yep.
Yeah,
It
okay.
starts with him getting his ass kicked and then he dies. Um, and I think this is and even with what we do, kind of going back to our personal careers and our fields, sometimes when you have a great month, you can ride those coattails for a couple weeks, or you don't feel like you have to get back at it right away. Complacency a lot of times doesn't feel like a failure. It feels like rest. It feels like comfort. And that's why it's so dangerous. Now, I'm a believer in rest. I think that you do need to rest. You do need to unplug. I personally will try and take anywhere from 3 to 5 days off every quarter and just spend those by myself. I like to be alone just to kind of fully recharge. Again, teenagers, labradoodles. I need my personal time just to like decompress and exhale. So there is a difference between rest and complacency. Rest is scheduled. It's on the calendar. I know it. I know when it's going to be. Complacency though is I don't need to work today. I'm gonna check out a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
So
Well,
how do you combat complacency?
are you asking
Well,
me?
I think yeah, I mean, what do you think? I think one of the ways that you combat complacency is just by constantly raising your standards, uh, especially after wins. And one area that I really think about this, raising your standards, is uh, men's X Games half pipe in the winter. Because when you look at the tricks that these guys were doing 15 years ago and winning, and at the time they were groundbreaking and they'd never been done before, now they're like so elementary.
Mhm.
And it's because these guys are just elevating their game every single year. Um, and so that's always same with skateboarding and some of these other kind of extreme sports. So that's one reason I like watching that stuff is because you can't be complacent. If you're going to win, you have to just come up with the next best trick and excel at it and develop that skill. I know that
Mhm.
you're into that a little bit more than I am, but
Yeah, I would say also just being in like student mode, just always having something else that you're trying to get better at, even if you are at the top of your game. Michael Jordan, as an example, he's still a student. He's still practicing. He's still doing what needs to be done. And I think aside from just that aspect of it, also just because it makes things exciting. I think you have a little bit more, just to keep life interesting, just to push you and have that sense of interest and just curiosity on what
mm,
new kind of aspects of whatever it is you're pursuing. How else can you get better and just always be growing? And I think if you do that, that'll take some of this complacency and hopefully put it behind you where you're not even thinking about the chance of becoming complacent.
yeah. One of my favorite Bible lessons, it talks in the Bible about having the faith like a child, and you always want to have your faith and your belief like that of a child. And a child, they have big dreams, and they say, "Why not?" And they say, "Why not me?" Um, and so that's something that is always just kind of going back to the always being in student mode, always learning. You got to be humble. If you're someone that has had success and you've experienced greatness and you are the best, well, it's very easy to say, I don't, what you can't teach me anything. Why am I listening to you?
Hmm.
But the best teachers are also the best students.
Definitely. 1000%.
1000%.
Well, let's run it back, you guys. Let's finish this episode up. So, Nick Saban's 5 enemies of greatness. Just a quick recap here. Number one, entitlement. Nobody owes you anything. Show up regardless. Show up anyways. Number two, just that lack of discipline. Understanding that motivation can fade, but systems are what keep you winning. Number three, circumstances over vision. This is the one that Ben was so big on. Stop reacting and start rooting yourself in your values, and that's going to push you forward. We promise you. Number four, self pity. Don't get soft, get real. Really, really focus on just being in a good headspace. Don't get soft. Just stay hard, as David Goggins would say. Stay hard. And then last but not least, number five, complacency. What got you here will definitely not keep you here. Always be learning, always be growing. Just try and always find ways to avoid complacency through tricking yourself to be excited about something new and growing.
Mhm.
And remember what Nick Saban says, greatness only belongs to those who earn it again every day.
Mm, that's right. Greatness is something that is earned daily. Love that.
Mhm.
Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. If this episode lit a fire, please share it. We're building the channel. Our goal is to get to 1 million subscribers. So if this lit a fire, share it with a friend, a family member, someone that is inspiring you, someone that you want to help support. This is the pursuit of progress, and we're not here to be average. We're here to be life changing. We're here to change our lives. We're here to do big things, have big goals, have dreams. You matter. And we want you part of this community. So subscribe, leave a review, and keep chasing better, not just today, but every day. We'll see you guys next Friday. God bless.
Have a good one, guys.